Hi, Empaths. Welcome back to Journey Through the Tarot after 2 weeks with the Lover's card and introducing the Chariot this week. So this journey is inspired by Dirty and Divine by Alice B. Grist, a transformative journey through the Tarot. She spends a day with each card. We're doing a week, although we spent 2 weeks with the Lovers as I was on vacation. And wow, what a couple of weeks it was. And I'm getting a lot of the history, symbolism, and divination from one of my teacher, Robert M. Place, his book, The Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination. And we're working with the Rider-Waite symbolism or Waite-Smith symbolism in the Rider Tarot deck. Right, if you're looking to pick up any of those, they're in my Amazon store, linked in the description of this video. Right, so coming out of a week with the Lovers. It was an incredible week, right? All that rich symbolism. So let's get into it. Yeah, I had 2 weeks with the Lovers. If you recall from last week's video, or 2 weeks ago, last video, where we introduced the Lovers, I was in Las Vegas visiting my brother, and then I was also the next day going to travel to LA. So, specifically Universal City. And we went to Universal Studios, my family and I. It was family vacation. And while we were exploring Universal Studios, the number 6 was everywhere, right? And the Lovers in Roman numerals is 6. So that number was everywhere. Numerologically, standing in line for rides, right? And being told, okay, go to line 6. I was like, okay, makes sense. And also while standing in line for rides, it was interesting because I was not only was I consistently directed to get in line 6, but I also noticed how couples were able to get further in line faster by having one person stand in the line and the other cutting through to stand with them. So even though it felt like people were cutting in front, right? This was an interesting sort of observation about human nature. Your first instinct is, this is the end of the line, why are you cutting in front of me? And all they'd have to say is, oh, I'm with this person that's way up there in line. And suddenly we felt, well, okay, they should be with their loved one, right? They should be with their partner. And I realized, no one said anything when they realized there was someone up there waiting for them. But if it was just them cutting, of course, we would all be aggressive probably. So that idea in human nature is very interesting. And it made me wonder, how else in life do people who are in partnership get further ahead than single people, right? Like, it just was this unspoken agreement that, oh, okay, you have a loved one up there. All right. Even though maybe the person has 3 other people with them. Oh, okay. Well, you have one person up there. Okay. That makes sense. You want to be with your loved one. I just found that interesting. That stood out to me because it happened consistently as you're waiting in line, right, for rides. I would never think of doing that. I would never dream of doing that. But I guess, and maybe that's also my way of thinking, in that I don't tend to rely on other people in certain ways that maybe others do, or that's not an instinct of mine, right, to use connections to get ahead. So something to think about, right? Something interesting to think about and consider. Like, maybe is that the smartest approach and strategy, to think I should do it all alone? Probably not. And then, so from LA in Universal City, my family was driving to the Sequoia National Forest. And I noticed a number stood out to me that was written on a rock, and it was probably for, I guess, to mark location probably. And it was 22.11. So 2 master numbers, right? But numerologically adding up to 6. 2 is about partnership, and 11 is about manifestation and alignment to higher power. And then add all those numbers up and you get a 6 for harmony, the number of the, right? The number of the lovers, union, harmony. And also we were driving up the national forest and it was a lot of mountains, right? In fact, the elevation was so high that there was snow on the tops of those mountains. And, you know, there's a mountain in between, right? A mountain is clearly depicted between the lovers. So that was interesting. And then later that day, an article on my Facebook feed showed up, and it was about how trees like to cuddle. And we were on our way to see sequoia trees, right, in the national forest. And it was talking about how trees like to cuddle, and they actually treat each other like old married couples. And there's even a term for when they grow together called inosculation. So that was a crazy synchronicity. And I thought that was really lovely and beautiful. What a beautiful thought about how trees relate to each other, you know, and hold each other. And then while driving up the Pacific Coast Highway, we stopped at a beach and dolphins were swimming and playing close to the shore. There were 4 altogether that I could see, and 2 of them never separated from each other. It felt really magical to see them so closely and reminded me of the soulmate oracle card that was pulled for a video reading that was scheduled a few days later. And I posted that video, some video footage that I had taken, some of what I consider the best footage of those dolphins on this channel. And then the reading is right after, and the reading is something about, are you seeking more adventure? And maybe you're meant to bring that into the world, right? That was what the reading was about. And you can see in the thumbnail of that video on this channel, the soulmate card with the dolphins on it. So, and it's right next to the dolphin video. And I didn't expect to post that dolphin video. I didn't expect to see dolphins. I didn't know what I was going to see on that trip, but I thought, how magical. I want to share this moment with my viewers, right? It was just so magical. And the ocean is always magical for me, particularly the Pacific Ocean. And to see those dolphins, it was just so beautiful and inspiring. It was a beautiful image and it had a lasting impact. It was just very magical. So I wanted to share that with you. Those videos were on this channel. And, you know, just felt like amazing synchronicities. Seeing those dolphins and how they swam together. You'll see some of that in the video. It was amazing. And then during these 2 weeks, I celebrated my birthday on November 27th. And it was while I was in LA. And I have expected to manifest an opportunity or attract in a soulmate that would change my life. And while that didn't happen, I was at the Santa Monica Pier for my birthday and saw a few souvenirs with the correct spelling of my name. And that never happens. It's usually missing the second A. And I also had it in the back of my mind that I was resetting my chart for the year with this trip, my astrological chart. Although I didn't have an official astrological cartography reading, but I did recall a relocation astrological reading I had with an amazing astrologer named Anne Orderly, who said, while in my natal chart, my midheaven is in Pisces, and then in New York City, where I lived for 12 years, my midheaven is in Aries, giving me a totally different vibe. My midheaven in LA is in the sign of Gemini, right? And as you know, as we learned last time, Gemini is associated with the Lover's card. That's the zodiac sign associated. So, and that gave me some much needed air in my chart. And I do feel different now that I'm back. Now that I'm back home, I do feel more motivated to fulfill my dreams. I feel, I just feel different. I definitely feel different. And then I always ask my best friend about his experiences. He's actively taking this journey as well, integrating these archetypes, and he has amazing insights. So I always ask him what's coming up for him. And on Thanksgiving Day or around that time, he hung out with 4 different couples. And some were married, some were not. And he had some deep conversations about their relationships, including what they felt the purpose was for their unions. And he felt like he learned a lot from their stories of shared struggles and responsibility, as well as joy and pleasure. He had the realization that his work with the Lover's card would be inner work, harmonizing internally. And he did have a lot of relationship stuff come up as well in dating people at different levels of engagement and self-awareness, and understanding that the projections and wounding that shows up or is placed on him has very little to do with him as a person, and that his self-awareness is a gift in not taking on sometimes completely inaccurate feedback or criticisms. And this is in part why we do the work, right? To integrate and heal, so we discontinue taking on other people's BS, right? We're self-actualizing as we integrate how these archetypes relate to us personally and how much of them we own, how much of this archetype am I owning in myself, and how is it showing up now? And can I upgrade that? Can I level up? Can I integrate more? How much am I pushing away? Even with negative connotations of the card, it's still shadow. Light attributes are still shadow if we're not owning them, right? And the qualities we don't deem all that good or of the light, we still need to integrate in that we own that, we have that potential, right? Otherwise, what goes unacknowledged doesn't go away. It just comes in the back door, right? It shows up and it becomes compulsive. So we want to look at this. This is how we grow in consciousness. So that's what we're doing. And he found that very empowering in relationship. His self-awareness came in handy as he came face to face with other people's projections and criticisms this week as well. And he's committed to this process. And like I said, he's incredibly self-aware and insightful. And I think we do that for each other. We're both committed to growth. We were talking one night about a guy he was dating, which is brand spanking new and very casual at the moment. But he had an odd situation where he started talking to a friend of the guy he was dating, unbeknownst to him, unbeknownst to my friend. He didn't know they were friends. And the person that he was talking to ended up revealing that he was looking for someone to hook up with, not only with him, but 2 of his friends. And then when it was revealed that one of the friends was the guy my friend had been dating, all of a sudden he wasn't invited. And my friend felt conflicting feelings around this. At first, he was kind of judgmental of the guy he was dating for wanting an experience like that. And then he started feeling resentful that he wasn't invited. He was disinvited. And we talked about that. We had a conversation about that. And I pointed out that it was probably because he was not being seen as a casual hookup, but someone that this guy wanted something more with. And that might be part of his struggle, this whole time, although he blames himself maybe for not being attractive enough or whatever you tell yourself, not being worthy. It was probably that he was just being seen as more than just a casual hookup. So he was misreading it based on his own wounds and perception of self, right? In relationship, which is where all our wounds show up so intensely. And so after I pointed that out, that he was probably not being seen as a casual hookup and someone maybe more relationship material, the very next night he was going to hook up with a guy who said he couldn't go through with it because he saw my friend as relationship material and wanted to date him instead, completely confirming what we had just talked about. This was interesting because the angel in the Lover's card has fiery red hair and is sometimes viewed as Archangel Raphael. And I have fiery red hair. Replace the P with a C, and you got my first name. So we have been answered prayers in each other's lives, my best friend and I, and blessings to each other. We have each other's backs as we navigate relationships, having the most profound transformation in this area. Because as you probably know yourself, there's nothing more motivating than relationship issues, right? To change yourself. Another friend of mine who was very stubborn and seemingly would change for nobody was receiving a lot of criticism from her partner in a lot of distance and space as sort of an act of disapproval or punishment. And it really is encouraging her to look at her wounds and her tendencies and to heal. And she wouldn't have done that otherwise, right? So it is a motivating force. And we just have to be clear about what is it that is something that needs to be healed and looked at, and what is it that's being projected on us that maybe isn't ours to heal. And I think that's a struggle for empaths. And that's why we're doing this self-actualization work, right? Is the criticism of a partner accurate? Is it accurate feedback? Or is it based on their distortion, right? A distortion in their view. It's important to know yourself to know, is this mine to take? Is this valid criticism? Is this something I actually want to change and work on in myself? Or is this a manipulation tactic, etc., right? Like, is this accurate and valid? It's important to know yourself to know. And then my friend is seeing another guy who is so much like he was at 18, grappling with his sexuality, that he's finding healing and maybe even justice for his 18-year-old self as he sees his own reflection in this younger man. And this is when I entered the story of my friend's life, when he was 18 years old. And I at the time consistently challenged his learned homophobia, and in fact, I was the first one he officially came out to, which was really meaningful and moving to both of us. That, you know, it just showed the depth of our connection and how much we trusted each other. Because that was very early on in our friendship. And I found a meme that explained our relationship perfectly about how to make love last. Falling in love with each new person that your partner transforms into. Being committed to growth. You need to be with someone who gets it and gives you the freedom to grow as well, even in platonic relationships. In fact, platonic love is also included in the meaning of the Lover's card, as we learned from Robert M. Place. And I quote him, "As in Plato's Symposium, here love is depicted as one continuum, a divine force that impels us to pursue the good, from the physical to the spiritual." And Plato's Symposium is a philosophical text depicting a friendly contest of speeches given by a group of notable men attending a banquet, including Socrates. In this symposium, Plato writes of the ladder of love. Platonic love concerns rising through levels of closeness to wisdom and true beauty, from carnal attraction to individual bodies, to attraction to souls, and eventually union with the truth. So platonic love's indicated here too, platonic partnership. And that's interesting because I found myself rekindling friendships from that time where I met my best friend in musical theater, conservatory, some friends I got really close to. We started rekindling, and in even talking about doing projects together and working in partnership. So that was really exciting to see where, you know, there are people maybe that I can depend on to create with, right? The lovers create together. They're depicted in the Garden of Eden together. So they are part of each other because it is like the story of Adam and Eve, right? So this can be an indication of twin flames if you believe in twin flames as well, right? Because this is Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. As we learned in the introduction to the card. So, and as I saw in waiting in line to get on rides in Universal City, I saw how being in union with another, in partnership, that it helps you get further in life, right? Further than you would alone, in some ways, probably. But I've had a lot of experiences where I have attempted to lean on unreliable people, and I think that trained me to just go it alone. Just do it alone. You'll get things done faster. It'll be easier. And, but then I can only do so much, you know? So talking with, and then, you know, sometimes you need to bounce ideas off of other people, much like I'm talking to my best friend during this process to see how he resonates, because he's so insightful. And if it was just coming from me and we didn't bounce it off and process together, I don't know how deeply I would be affected by this experience. But when I talk to him and I see how it's affecting him and talk to him about it, how I see the insights and synchronicities for him, and also what's coming in for me, and just seeing how he responds and relates, it amplifies the effect, right? And it allows for the process, and it gives you a witness to the experience, and it helps you integrate the lessons deeply. And I don't think I could do that alone. And I think maybe that's true of life in general. Just witnessing and observing it all alone. I mean, that's been my experience up until now. I'm not sure what it's like to share it with somebody. The closest I found is my best friend, and he says the same. It's like that foundation of friendship is what we're seeking in partnership as well. And someone you can take the journey with and have fun with, and both be committed to growth and be accepting of the change of one another, right? So leaning on platonic friendships is also important and helpful in your romantic relationship, right? Especially if you're monogamous, because relying on one person for all your connection and love is just too heavy. So, and certainly in work, right, we have to rely on other people at times. It's interdependent. We're interdependent as a species. So it's very important that we get comfortable with accepting help from others, learning to depend on other people, and learning how to discern who is dependable and who is trustworthy. And I think that's part of the lover's experience as well. As we really self-actualize and learn more about ourselves, we can be more discerning there. That's another reason I feel compelled to do this process, to go through this process with you. And then when I was talking about, we were going through this process with my friend and I, this picture showing up again right now on my Chromecast home screen of a clownfish. That's incredible. It's on it right now. This picture of a clownfish. That's crazy. I was just about to talk about it, and there it is, looking at me with one eye in profile. So pics of clownfish kept popping up on my Chromecast home screen. And so I asked him if he had any enlightenment involving his fish. And he had his mother over for Thanksgiving. And he acknowledged that her relationship to the fish was enlightening to him. He began referring to them as his high maintenance painting. And we both acknowledged that the high maintenance aspect made him feel more invested in the fish tank than a painting. But also he loves those fish and he treats them so well. He takes so much care. So it's not completely accurate metaphor, but still something to take away when considering how to show up and present in a relationship. I mean, my mind's blown that fish is looking at me right now, but so, I mean, it's even more of a confirmation that, and it's not just clownfish in his tank, but I mean, those are standout fish, and it just changed. But so that's interesting, like that the high maintenance thing, right? We sometimes have this idea that if we have less needs for a relationship, that will be more desirable. And oftentimes we'll find that's just not the case. And that we've been trained and conditioned to do so by parents who gave us the message that love would be taken away, or even more harmful, that we would be punished or seen as a burden for having needs. And when that happens, we self-abandon, right? We learn these patterns of self-abandonment and how to detach from our own needs, the needs of our bodies, our emotional needs, and a sense of self. And I think when we're given that message from an early age, it shows up in relationships. We think, well, this is how I maintained a relationship with my mother or father, right, or caregiver. So certainly this will make me more attractive to a life partner or a romantic interest. And it's just not the case. In fact, people value what they work for more, right? So it only helps you to know your standards and boundaries and to communicate them maturely, lovingly, but still have those conditions, right? Those conditions. We hear about unconditional love, but it just doesn't work in a romantic relationship. There's got to be boundaries. There's got to be deal breakers. So are you clear about what those are for you? And my friend and I also came to the realization together that the Lover's card archetype is about an authentic experience involving the human need for love and connection, both internally and externally, as this card has no status or authority as the temporal rulers did, but trumps them nonetheless. Right, the other cards, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, right? These temporal rulers, the High Priestess, don't forget the High Priestess, who comes before the Empress. These temporal rulers all have status. They all have respect because of their role or status, right? Or role, and what they do. So the Lovers is merely, a human need. It's the human need for connection and love, and this driving force in our lives, and it trumps that, right? Like we come from the Hierophant of communing with God, right? Doing divine will for our lives, the spiritual understanding of life in solitude, right? It's a solitary experience. Our need for love and connection trumps that. So interesting. It even trumps the esteem given to, someone who is seen as having authority, right? So even that's not enough to fulfill, right? We need that connection and love. And as our conversation deepened, we began uncovering that how we showed up in in love mirrored how our fathers did so, respectively. Our experiences being rather opposite. His father put up with no BS and left, and my father has an inflated sense of responsibility and unconditional love, not leaving or abandoning for any reason. And I brought up that in family constellation, which I'm trained in, I've studied intensely, that we look at relationship to mother, who is our first love. When we're talking about healing our romantic relationships or relationships in general, we look at mother because mother's our first love. We attune to mother first, right, as a fetus. But our love styles are certainly strikingly similar to our fathers, my friend and I. We concluded that as our fathers were responding to our mothers relationally, perhaps our love styles are also a response to how our mothers showed up. And that was mind-blowing for both of us. We hadn't looked at it that way before. So learning to love based in response to our mother's needs or what our mothers put out, much like our fathers did, which is why our styles reflected. So does that work for you? If you look at your love style and how you bond and how you show up in a romantic relationship, do you find that it's similar to the way your father showed up? Even if that means he walked away, right? Or created codependency, whatever it is, right? Putting his needs last, right? And, seeing the needs of his wife and family as more important than his own, right? So does it reflect your love style? I would love to know. I find that very interesting. Or just consider for yourself, does that work for you? We were both kind of blown away by that realization. And also, my best friend brought up that he's currently watching a show on Amazon Prime, their streaming service, called Modern Love. And he highly recommends it because it's hitting home for him. I have yet to watch it, but seeing how moved he was, I feel compelled to watch it too. He was very moved by just the first episode, and he's really getting into it. So he highly recommends that if you're looking for something to watch currently on Amazon Prime. It's called Modern Love. I haven't watched it, so I can't give any reviews, but he highly recommends it, particularly if you're working on integrating the lovers still. We also looked back at how much work we've both done to discontinue the patterns of self-abandonment that we've learned. That inner harmony and wholeness is the key to successful relationship harmony, so that nothing pulls you out. Complete self-acceptance with a commitment to growth. And that sounds like a contradiction, but such is the human experience, right? Completely accepting yourself, loving yourself as you are now, but also growing and being committed to learning. And I don't think I'll ever be done learning and growing, but can I also accept where I'm at now and not think I need to change to be worthy or loved, right? Can I love myself as I am? And then love the next version of me and the next version of me, right? So, and that's much like the continuum that Plato was describing, right? In his symposium. It was externally focused, but that's also inner work too, right? Accepting yourself, and loving each incarnation of you as you transform. And then when I was at the airport on my way home, I was putting my suitcase in the trunk, and I was also carrying a large bottle of water. And if you know me, I usually come with a big bottle of water. I need to hydrate. And I ended up dropping the bottle of water, and it started rolling into the oncoming traffic. So I ran to grab it and bent down really quickly, and the bottom of the zipper of my winter coat broke open because it's really tight around the legs. And it ripped at the bottom, and it's still broken. Like, I tried to repair it, and I don't know what it's called, but like the head of the actual zipper came off. So it's beyond repair, I think. And then the next day, because I didn't have a winter coat and I was headed out to do some errands, I threw on a hoodie, but the zipper wouldn't work. It just refused to zip up. It's not broken. It just was being stubborn. So I threw on a sweatshirt that didn't have a zipper instead and ran out the door. And then I made a mental note, because these things have meaning. They always do for me. I made a mental note to research the dream symbol of a zipper, because I believe that all these things have meaning, and they usually do. So if something happens to you and it's a repeated symbol, I encourage you to look up the dream symbol. Even if though it's waking life, the symbol is the same. It's always the same. And so when I did Google it, my mind was blown, because the dream symbol for a zipper is intimacy. It's about intimacy. It could be because the zipper wouldn't close in both instances, that I'm extremely authentic in my intimate or romantic relationships, but perhaps too open and vulnerable. Maybe too much too soon, right? And it can also reveal, a zipper in your dream can also reveal that your sex life has the potential to get better. And I probably so. And an indication that you should ask yourself, what are the issues you need to explore or look at in closer detail around intimacy. That's what we're doing with the Lover's card. And what the zipper reveals is more interesting than the zipper itself. So looking at what the zipper revealed, and it's second through fourth chakra, right? Second through fourth chakras, sacral, solar plexus, and heart, right? All involved with relationship. I mean, they all are, but sacral chakra is about emotional intimacy, pleasure, sexuality. And then solar plexus is sense of self, right? Boundaries, learning to say no, really in touch with your own needs. And then the heart chakra is love, is connection. So interesting, right? I found that interesting, because it wasn't a pant zipper, right? It wasn't a zipper on it was on my coat. So that's interesting. And I guess it was root chakra as well. But the root chakra is pointed down towards the earth, so I don't really count it in that situation. I'm just being technical. All right, calm down. And then another cute couple of little synchronicities that showed up was in my shower today. I have, where are we at time-wise? I have these rosebud shower hooks, right, on the shower rod. And two of them that were side by side came unhooked. It's so annoying when they do that. But instead of it having a gap in the shower curtain, it actually, they were hooked together. They were linked together, so they held each other up. And I was like, that's so cute. And that's so, I mean, it's just a tiny little synchronicity, but I thought that's so cute and beautiful. And it was another example of how sort of like together we're stronger, right? And it was like a, connection, a link. So it was also a symbol of the Lover's card to me. Those two little rosebuds. It's so cute. And also they're rosebuds, right? They're not fully bloomed. Symbol of being too vulnerable, too open up front. Hold it in a bit. And if we're both kind of aligned, we can link together more easily. Something like that. Another synchronicity that happened was I pulled out my tarot deck, the Rider-Waite deck, from my suitcase because I had brought the cards with me, and I couldn't get the cards to fit in the deck for some reason. And I couldn't get the box to close, and there was no reason for that to happen, so I was confused. When I took them out, I found that a coffee stirrer that I saved for my Southwest flight on Southwest Airlines was in the box with the cards, and look what's on the coffee stirrer. This heart. So I thought that was a cute little synchronicity about the lovers and love. And I don't know how it got in the box in the middle of the card deck. It was crazy. I was like, how did that get in there? I mean, I clearly must have thrown it in my suitcase in a rush, but how it got in the deck, who knows? But I thought that was the cutest little synchronicity, this little coffee star. I save these sometimes because I use them to mix my facial moisturizer that I hand make. So that was cute. So that was what I came up with. That was my experience of the Lover's card. Right? So what was your experience like with the Lover's card? I mean, I'm sure there were many more. That was 2 weeks. And I mean, that's kind of what I remembered. I didn't journal really that consistently because I was on vacation, but I tended to like make notes in my phone. But yeah, that was my week with the Lovers. I'd love to hear if any of my experiences gave you a light bulb moment, or if you had an amazing experience with a Lover's card and would love to share. I would love for you to share in the comments. I'd love to hear from you what happened for you with your time in the Lover's card. And so now let's introduce the next card, the Chariot. We're working with the Chariot this week. We'll have a week with the Chariot this time. Let's get into the history of the Chariot. Well, it is the 7th card in the Major Arcana, right? So it's the last card in the first act of the 3 acts of the Major Arcana, right? The major events. So let's talk about the history here. As the Tarot trumps represent a triumphal parade, it is not surprising the next trump depicts a chariot, which was a prominent feature in Renaissance triumphs. In the Italian decks, this card was sometimes literally referred to as il carro trionfale, the triumphal chariot. The Milanese decks depict a chariot in profile with a beautiful young woman as the driver. In the Visconti Sforza, her 2 horses are winged, and this female seems to be influenced by the image of Petrarch's Lara as the triumph of virtue in his poem Il Trionfi, and possibly by the Chariot of the Soul from Plato's Phaedrus, in which the driver is also a female and the horses are winged. In the early woodblock tarots, the charioteer is a winged figure, possibly Cupid. In the Minchiate, the figure is female, but depicted as a nude Venus. Although it is redundant, these decks may represent the chariot as a further triumph of Cupid. As an alternative interpretation, the chariot in both of these Italian decks may represent love as a driving force that is spurring one on to a higher goal. This is reinforced by the fact that in the Minchiate, the chariot comes after the Wheel of Fortune. In the 15th century Gringognore deck, we find perhaps the oldest depiction of the charioteer as a warrior. In this early hand-painted Italian deck, the charioteer is illustrated facing the viewer, armored and armed with a sword and halberd. He is like the figure of Mars sitting in a chariot found in the series of 15th century allegorical images referred to as the Tarocchi of Mantegna. The chariot in the Tarot of Marseille continues in this tradition, but it depicts the charioteer as a young prince with a crown, a scepter, and classical armor standing in a chariot that is also facing the viewer. The chariot's 2 horses seem to trot directly at the viewer. In the older version, the horse's hind legs are just visible. They are like the Gringognore horses, but the style of drawing is not as sophisticated. Like the hero of a triumphal parade, the charioteer is triumphing all of the cards that came before. He is like the lover who in the previous trump has made the decision to take the road of hardship in hopes of winning a greater reward, and now he is setting out on that journey and triumphing over Cupid. He is now operating in the soul of will and ready for the challenges ahead. In various decks, this triumph is interpreted differently, but none of them have the flaming sword that Levi envisioned. Perhaps that is why he left it out of his illustration. However, in the oldest existing tarot, the charioteer's beasts have human faces and lion-like bodies, like Levi's sphinxes. I have a picture for you on that from Robert's book. The warrior in the chariot, crown, and then the beasts, the sphinxes, have faces, right? So now let's get into the Waite-Smith symbolism of the chariot. Waite says that the charioteer is carrying a drawn sword and that on the shoulders of the victorious hero are supposed to be the Urim and Thummim. Urim and Thummim are the stones used as divinatory tools by the ancient Israeli priests and often shown on their breastplates. Smith's picture is true to Levi's model and contains neither detail. As in Levi's drawing, the charioteer is carrying a wand or a scepter, and on his shoulders, Smith has depicted the same hammered metal faces that serve as part of his highly decorative classical armor. Although depicted in profile as they are, they may be interpreted as waxing and waning crescent moons. Do you see the faces there? And they're also waxing and waning crescent moons. Smith has switched the positions of the dark and light sphinxes from the way Levi presented them, but like Levi, she includes a tantric sexual emblem on the shield surmounted by the solar disk of Horus, and gives the charioteer a scepter and a star-covered canopy. 3 stars on his crown in Levi's illustration have been reduced to 1 8-pointed star. His chariot is clearly the cubic stone, and he is the spirit emerging from the stone. The leather teruges that form his skirt are covered with alchemical glyphs, as is his belt. The square, the symbol of fourfold matter, appears on his chest. He is the conquering hero who has transformed sexual energy into a vehicle that can carry him toward his spiritual goal, the spiritual sun, which is the meaning of the crest on the front of his chariot. He is still, however, concerned with the physical world. To proceed, he has to pull together the opposing forces represented by the 2 sphinxes, which are pointed in opposing directions. And so for divination, if this card shows up in a spread for you, this is what it might mean. The chariot represents confidence, preparedness, travel, and victory. It represents the zodiac sign of Cancer, movement forward, dark and light, balancing to move forward, ready to move towards or into something, willpower, leaving the kingdom and departure in triumph. Succor, which is aid or assistance to those in distress. Providence, also war, triumph. Presumption, vengeance, trouble. The first non-human card, both in energy and a theme, doesn't pretend to be something banal. Rather, the chariot sums up life. Life is so hard, we suck it up, we get on. We triumph time and time again. Every day that we wake up, we overcome our chaos. Some of those chaotic moments will be more searing than others. The key is not to get lost in the pain, but to ride past it, to become more whole as a result of our scars. The chariot is raw, bare-knuckled survival. It is becoming It is becoming through trial and tribulation. It is the evolution of mankind, consistently overcoming disaster, leaving apes in the dust and becoming terrifically empowered. It is riding past heartbreak, fear, anxiety, addiction, strolling onward with a soft smile and a swinging hip. The warrior is in the card holds no reins, just a wand. He controls through the strength of his will and mind. The charioteer stands tall. No sitting down for him. He's all about action and moving forward. Above his head, a canopy of 6 pointed stars suggesting his connection to the celestial world and will of the divine. Black and white sphinxes represent duality, positive and negative, light and shadow, at times opposing forces. These sphinxes are pulling in opposite directions, but the charioteer uses his willpower and sheer resolve to steer the chariot forward in the direction he wants. Behind the chariot flows a wide river. Can you see the water? A wide river. Symbolic of the need to be in the flow with the rhythm of life while also charging ahead toward your own goals and intentions. Overcoming obstacles in your path through focus, confidence, determination, and the boldness of a warrior. That's what we're integrating. That's what we're integrating this week. I'm excited. That sounds awesome to me. So now that we have the history, the symbolism, right, the traditional meanings, and the divination of the chariot, this is what we're working with this week. We got to send it out with sound, right? Let's intend to bring these experiences in, and also integrating those experiences of the lover more deeply with sound. My crystal, my frosted crystal singing bowl. So focus on your experience with the lovers, what you might want to integrate there, and your intentions. We're going to carry our intention of bringing in experiences with the chariot this week with the sound of the singing bowl. So you might want to close your eyes, relax, get in touch with your breath, and with the intent here of integration of the lovers, and with welcoming in experiences with the chariot. Beautiful. Slowly coming back to the room. So we're sending out those intentions far and wide with the sound and letting go, allowing those experiences to come in without expectation, right? And then we'll see how they show up. It can be very surprising, as you've probably learned, as I have. It can be very interesting and these experiences and synchronicities come in ways that we can't predict. So I'm excited to see how this comes in. The Chariot week, right? So thank you for liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Click the notification bell so you are able to participate in the premiere of these videos. I hope you're enjoying the journey through the tarot. I'm presenting these different types of videos for whatever you resonate with, right? These are tools for integration. These are tools for self-actualization and information for empaths. You don't have to be an empath. You can just be curious about the tarot for this one. But I do feel like our empowerment comes through self-actualization, self-discovery, through the integration of these archetypes, right, into wholeness. And that's what we're working on. So you'll find that some of these experiences come in internally, some come externally, some are well integrated and light attributes for us, right? We own them, and then some are complete shadows. So it's a great experience and unique for each person in just deeper understanding of self, more self-awareness. So I hope you're finding value in that. Thank you for your comments on the videos about how it's resonating with you and what's showing up for you. I really appreciate them. If you'd like an individual reading or session, that'll be in the description of this video. Also, anything that I've used, you can go to my Amazon store. That'll be linked in the description as well. And the Idealist Journey Through the Tarot. You can see different decks and the books that I'm working with, and maybe some additional ones in there. And I'm wishing you incredible experiences in triumph this week, with the zodiac sign of Cancer, maybe. Really learning to harness your will and ability to, wield some more of your power here. All right. I will see you in the next video. Bye, Empath.